Welcome traders to In the Trading Zone dollar yen edition. We're going to be looking at the yen market. We're going to be looking at the dollar market. Obviously some big data dropping today as well. We had services PMI out of the US. Really interesting data drop. Came in as expected, but we are seeing a little bit of a US dollar decline at the moment. Dollar yen really interesting. We had jolt job openings yesterday, spiked the markets into that 150 where we saw huge volumes coming in and a drop in the market. If you checked out our live stream yesterday, you could see the reaction to that live. Now the dust has settled, I'm going to jump into dollar yen. Let's get going. So if we just take a look at the ISM services PMI first, you can see that it came to 33.6% here. If we just go over to the calendar on Trading Economics, you can see here at 3 p.m. BST we had ISM services PMI. Actual was 53.6, the same or pretty much the same as what was being forecasted. Forecast for around about 53.7. Consensus was 53.6. So we got that coming out. Previous was 54.5. So it is a slight contraction from the previous, but anything above 50 is usually seen as growth. And you can see here 53.6. So despite that, we did get a little bit of dollar strength after that. However, since then, we have had a little bit of a comeback in that move. Now, obviously, we've got a huge data drop coming this week. We've got the first NFP since the Fed paused interest rates. NFP being watched very, very closely, I feel. If I actually just change the impact to 2 and have a little look at what else came out today, we had the ADP employment change. That actually saw a really big decrease. We expected 153, came in at 89k. So is that a sign of what's to potentially come for the NFP towards the end of the week? Are we going to see lower numbers there? If we go back to that Friday NFP data, you can see that there is a consensus that we'd get around about 170,000. That is below the previous of 187k forecast. So when you've got forecast and consensus, you're looking at a number between that would be expected. If we did get a hotter than expected jobs number though, we could see obviously the US dollar continue to strengthen. If we saw a drop like we did today, then obviously we could see that completely change. Now, one market that's really interesting to us is dollar yen. We talked about this in our live stream yesterday. We talked about that big 150 level, or the zone between 150 and 152. We're expecting some kind of action at that point, and boy did we get it. Price came up into that 150 level, and you can see the reaction of what we had here. Price made a high around about 150.16, went all the way down into that 147.27. That was a 289 pip move in total, all in one action, all within a relatively small period of time. Price since then has just gone sideways. You can see pretty much we've traded between the sort of 148.80 up to the 149.20. So we've kind of just stayed in a little bit of a range here, but I am expecting some potential further downside, especially across those other yen pairs. Now, dollar yen, due to the sort of fundamental dynamics coming up this week, could still stay quite bullish. I think yen across the elsewhere is where we're going to be looking for those opportunities. One opportunity that we did talk about in the live stream was CAD yen. Really like the opportunity for this to come down into the 108 handle. This was all this area here where we saw these previous swing highs. Today we actually had a little bit of a setup. Price came up into the 109 level and just kept rejecting it. You can see I've also projected a trend line through here. Price basically came up to that point, formed a bit of a double top pattern, and then we've seen ever since the CAD yen price start to reverse and move to the downside. So if you did look at that move there would be something that you could have been interested in, targeting that 108. And I do feel like that could potentially continue. If we go up to the weekly chart, you can see that we closed below the key area here, which is around about that 110.50. Closed below it this week. We've seen that momentum continue. Now, if we are going to see yen strength start to come back into the market, because if we consider what happened last time we had an intervention, you know, the market moved from the high 151s all the way down into the 127s. Doesn't mean that that's going to happen necessarily for dollar yen. But if we take into sort of strength and weakness into consideration, CAD had some poor GDP figures. We're starting to see CAD move to the downside here. Oil has started to give back some of its gains as well. If we just go on to oil, we've got into those highs at $92, starting to see that pullback potentially into the $83 highs, which were formed back through here. So all in that, kind of bringing that all together, there's a potential for CAD yen to continue its downside move, and CAD yen is definitely one to watch for us. So we are going to be looking to see if we trade through that 108, which could then lead to a move possibly down to the 104. That being said, obviously big jobs number coming up this week. Dollar yen is going to be another one to watch. I would be very interested to see how this jobs data comes out. If we've got a hotter than expected jobs number and price made it all the way back into the 150, we could see some aggressive selling returning back into here. So if we get something like this, push into there, that could trigger some more sells into the market, because essentially if big players have got involved at 150 and they see price back at 150, it would make sense for them to think, well, this is just another opportunity to get back in at the similar price. So you could kind of just expect that sellers may be waiting here for another opportunity. If we do see a little bit of a decline in that, then we could see price trying to head back to the lows there, 147.20, where we did pretty much end up after the intervention, or suspected intervention. Nothing has really came out clarifying that information. It's just volume at 150, just, you know, it pretty much means that there was some kind of intervention at that point. But that's all I've got time for today. Thank you for watching In the Trading Zone. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel to see some more of our Forex trading content. And I'll catch you in the next video.